Hello and welcome to this demonstration. My name is Rasmus Edvards. I work as a solution engineer here at Oracle. Today we will take a look at Oracle Integration Cloud and more specifically how you can set up an integration flow to Slack to notify your users about something changing, whether it's change of data or change of analysis, or you want to send out notifications. So this is a part in a bigger demo series I've done where the use case is predictive network analysis. If you haven't seen the previous demos, link will be in the description below. So in the previous demos I covered a range of areas. I showed how you can use spatial analysis to identify, in this case, power lines that are at risk from a storm. I then showed how you can kind of automate this process so you don't have to repeat this spatial analysis, that it runs automatically when you import the new data sets. I then showed how you can create a web application with Oracle Apex in a matter of minutes and also embed these dashboards that you have created from Oracle Analytics Cloud. And in today's demo, I will show how you automatically set up an integration flow which will notify your user or management in Slack when, in this case, your power lines are at risk. So firstly, a little bit about Oracle Integration Cloud. So Oracle Integration Cloud targets SaaS integration, so software as a service integration. And this can be across cloud vendors and other vendors, but also, of course, Oracle SaaS programs. And it's mostly to connect and extend functionalities between these softwares, and also to automation of the end-to-end digital process. So things happen immediately when one thing takes effect in a software. We also manage the API lifecycle, so it's very easy for you to set this up. It's low code, as you will see, and you get really quick wins and a more integrated solution. So we're now in Oracle Integration Cloud, as you can see. On the left hand side you have a number of options. You have processes, you have a home tab, you have integrations where we'll head in. We have Visual Builder, which lets you extend your functionality of your software as a service by developing in a low-code framework. You have something called monitoring, where you can monitor the integrations and the services. In my case, we will head into integrations. And what we need to do first of all is to make two connections. So we need to make a connection to Slack in order to file our message, and we need to also make a connection to our Autonomous to check our view and our data. So I'll go ahead firstly and make a connection to Slack here. We have a number of different adapters which you can go ahead and easily connect to. But I will use Slack. We'll call it a name. For example, Rasmus Slack adapter. Let's go ahead and call it that. It then asks me for client ID, client secret, and scope from Slack. Client secret I already have copied and pasted because it's obviously secret, so you won't be able to see it. But if you're wondering where to find this, I have already created first of all a Slack workspace. Right, and this is just for testing, so I have just one person here, my colleague Nelson. I have some test Slack channels, and I actually already created one channel which we will use the weather warnings by just creating a channel here. I then created an app by going to apis.slack.com where you can create apps for your workspace. So I created an app, and in the basic information on the app, you will find app credentials. So here you have the client secret, which you can say show, which I won't do in this case. Since we already pasted that in, I will copy my client ID, which is also asked. Paste that in. For the scopes, so that's the scope, so what kind of rights it should have, so channel read, channel write, and so on. These you can go ahead and add under OF authentication and permission here. You will have both bot token scopes and user token scopes. So in my case, I have actually prepared the documents, so I will go ahead and copy that and paste them in the different scopes here I will use in my case. So let's go ahead and test if that actually works, or actually first of all we need to provide consent here. So it didn't work. You need to first of all provide consent for Integration Cloud to use this. So Slack asked me, is this okay that Integration Cloud is using this? Yeah, I allow it. Access allowed. So we have a green light, and now we can actually from Integration Cloud test that this connector is working, this adapter. And it does. So I will go ahead and save, and I will back out. So now that that is set up, we will go ahead and add our second connection, which is our autonomous data warehouse. In my case, you could have an ATP as well, autonomous transaction processing. I have a warehouse, so I will use that one. RAS, shared ADV, for example. It's a shared database. I will choose trigger and invoke, so it can be used for both. And we need to now provide some things. You have some optional information. So for example, service name. So what kind of service? So in my case, I will choose low, so I don't take up too much resources from the database when running queries. A wallet. This can be downloaded in the OCI console. So navigate to autonomous and download your wallet. So I will just choose my wallet here, upload. Wallet password, the password that you entered when you downloaded the wallet. Database user, which is Rasmus in my case, and the database password, which is in my case the same as the wallet password as I downloaded as my database user. So with that entered, we should be ready to go. So let's test it. Connection was tested successfully. Great. So then I go ahead and save that. And we head back. So now we made the connections, and quite easily, right? So we made and tested that these two connections work. So that's already set up. I didn't use any code really, just enter the information. So now we'll head into the actual integration, and we will create a new integration. So here you can do some different kind of integrations. App driven, so you have an app that initiates the integration. You have a scheduled orchestration, so this is that you set a timer that this integration should be done every hour, every day, or so forth, according to your preferences, or a file transfer. In my case, I will go for the scheduled orchestration, since we want to do this when we also have the scheduled integration for the weather data coming in. So I will click on that one and click select. So we need to name that as well. Let's call it RAS Slack integration int. Great. And we're ready to start building. As you can see, it's kind of a diagram and very visual. So you could search for a component. So in my case, it's the RAS shared ADV. So I will begin after the scheduling to choose my database. And this is because we want to now check if there is any power lines have been selected in the view that we have created from the spatial analysis. So I will call this power line data, for example. And then you can choose either to invoke a stored procedure, run an SQL statement, or perform operation on a table. And in our case, we want to perform an operation on a table, or more specifically, we want to perform it on a view. And I will use a select query. I don't need to insert or anything like that. Click next. Select a schema. So this is my database user. Rasmus should be somewhere here. Yep. And not the table. It was a view, right? And if I remember correctly, we named it Powerlines at Risk, and hope I find it. And here we have it. So I will select it and then import. And there we go. I have imported it. And since in my case, you could do some different kind of messaging to Slack, but I want to message how many power lines that are at risk. So I will just select the studio ID here, since you can count how many studio ID that is that are selected. So press OK. Next. And we get an overview what we have done, and this is fine, so click done. And now you will see it's visually represented. You could go ahead if you have some parameters you want to set, which you want to send into the database, you can map them quite easily. In my case, it's not needed. So now we want to count how many power lines have been selected, if any. And in that case, if there is any power lines selected, send a message to Slack. So we want a kind of a road crossing here, right? A road selection. So in this case, we'll choose a switch. So it's kind of what you would see in programming as a if statement is valid, do this, otherwise take this path. So I need to first of all define the criteria. So in my criteria, I want to use count, and then I want to count studio ID in this case. So it could be any parameter, but since we choose the studio ID, I'm gonna use that. And we close the brackets. And I want it to be greater than 0. So if the count is greater than 0, do this. So let's validate that, which is kind of neat that you can always validate, see if everything is correct, so you don't have to run into problems later. And it is. So go ahead and close it. So now we have set up a statement, right? So if the count of power lines at risk is greater than 0, take this path. Otherwise, go down here. But they're still yellow, right? And that's because at this moment, if you take this path or this path, nothing is happening. It's the same end result, which is basically nothing. So we need to add something that's a staging of this process. So here I will go ahead and add our Slack adapter. So Rasmus Slack adapter we have here. Perfect. So let's call this message to Slack. I don't know, whatever. You have the number of actions you can actually do. So create a channel. In our case, we just send a message. So send message. Next. That's actually very easy. So done. However, here we need to do some mapping, right? Because now we said send message, but what should this message contain? Well, that you define in the mapping here. So I will go ahead and edit the mapping. So if here we have the Slack, and then you automatically see what it's needed, a channel and some text to be posted. We can also see our power lines here, as you can see here. So this is kind of neat. You simply drag whatever you want to map into the connector or the adapter. So in my case, the channel will just be static, or a static target, right? It will be the same. So create target node information. It's text. If I remember correctly, let's have a look. Weather warnings underscore warnings. Weather underscore warnings. Should be it. Let's validate that. It's valid. Great. And when it comes to text, we want to map the studio ID and do a count on that. So I will map the studio ID, and easy as that. And I will actually, if I just perform a count of that, let's see if that works. That works. Then you would get a count, but it would be nice to have a little bit more sophisticated expression. Just not send a number. That would not make a lot of sense for the person who reads it. So I have performed a little bit of a query here, and more coding than this will it actually not contain. So I will in a second explain here what's actually going on. So here you will have the link. So I will actually send a text row which will link to our web application that we did in Apex. So I have the link here. So let's copy that in, and then the text. So that would be number of say power lines at risk, or something. And then we need the count of the power lines, and that we already have, so fairly easy. Just take Control X and we insert the count, and then we just close the link statement, right? This is providing the link. So let's see if this works. I think now it won't perhaps see that it's a string. Yeah, it did. Very neatly and nice. So this should actually convert in a link, and I'm using concat here, which is basically that we linking a string with a value. So in our case, we have the string with the link and the text, and count is our value, which is comma separated. And then we have another comma separated to close the link. So we have the link to the website, the text, and the count of power lines. So we will go ahead and validate that. Mapping is valid and ready to use. Perfect. Go ahead and close. I will go ahead and click save for extra safety measures. And then we need something that will initiate the integration. So we need to select, in this case, just the start time as the tracking field, and save that. So I will save again. Always love clicking on save. I will go back or close this integration. this scheduled integration. I will go ahead and just remove the filter there that was added, and hopefully we will see our integration at the top. We see it here. So now we need to activate it first of all. I want to contribute to Oracle with this integration, sure, of course. I will do an tracing and include payload. So you could activate and address actually the schedule when you will do this integration, since it's a scheduled integration. In my case, I will just go ahead and activate it, because for this demo purpose, I will just run it once, just to show how it works. So it says here it's underway, and here it's actually setting up really quickly. So if we just go back and forth here, it should be ready to go. Let's see. Yep, activated. So then I click here, how to run, and we have something called submit now. So it just does one submit of our integration. So let's go ahead and submit now. Ad hoc request in this case, because we're doing it once it's not scheduled, and it was done. So this happens quite instantly, but if you want to see did this go well before you actually check the result itself, you have something called monitoring. I find it very useful. You can use something called tracking, since I choose to track my integration. And we can actually see here that it was completed successfully. If it's not, you can actually go in on the ID and you get this visual flow of how it went, and it's really useful because in my case now everything is green, but you could see what path it took in the integration flow. And if there is a problem, it will light up red. So then you will see, it got stuck on the if statement, or it got stuck with the Slack adapter, and you can very easily find the problem. You can even show view activity stream, and it will even go over exactly what it's doing. Very easy to search for problems and find where the problem happened. I find this very useful. So let's check if it actually worked in practice. So as you can see, it worked. We got a message here from information bot. Power lines at risk are 65, and we also have the link here. Let's see if it works. Yes, and it asks us for our confirmation. And I will enter that. And the embedded dashboard from Oracle Analytics Cloud is loading. And it worked. So we got to our web application, we logged in, and we can now identify, see actually where these power lines are at risk from these weather warnings, from these strong winds coming in. And yeah, we have successfully notified our organization, so can now take further action. Perhaps these are a special group that are in this channel, and it doesn't end up in their mail or so forth where it's unsorted. So this is a way which you can easily, as you can see now, I did it from scratch, setting everything up. So it's fairly easy to use Integration Cloud, and yeah, hopefully you find it useful. So to summarize what we have done, we have integrated some weather data. We scheduled that integration with Oracle Integration Cloud. We store that in an autonomous database. We then have created a view with Oracle Spatial Studio, which selects power lines under risk, which are then displayed in Oracle Analytics Cloud, where it's also estimated how many customers at risk. We then create reports, or we also display it in a web application which runs completely on the autonomous database. And we have now today set up also a scheduled integration which occurs simultaneously, which checks if there is any power lines at risk, and if there are, it will automatically send out a message with a link to the Apex application where your organization can take further actions. My name is Rasmus Edvards. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, please address them to me, and I might cover a last demo where I show how you can make a single sign-on for all of these applications and look a bit into identity access management. Thank you.